It's rather simple what made Prey's experience so memorable. The exploration. Prey has a great sense of exploration. Many games do a good job with this. You see this a lot in the Skyrim and Fallout games where essentially you're dropped on a map and say, hey, go anywhere you want and you're gonna find something. Where if you look at the Deus Ex games, they have an open area but it's a lot smaller but densely packed full of good things to do. Prey shoots for more of the Deus Ex style of exploring with a multi-leveled space station where you just want to go everywhere. I found that Prey kept trying to get me to do the story while at the same time I really wanted to go and see the space station. What's nice is the game really allows you to do that. The story moves forward, but you can take a break and look at everything else around you and see what other secrets you can find. There are many elements that feed into the satisfaction of the exploration. Prey has a variety of tools and powers, and you may not even use all of them throughout your experience. The glue gun is right at home in a game like this. You can use the glue gun as a means to create a set of stairs to get up to an area you can't jump to, or you can use it as a bridge to then get across to something. Early on in the game, I came to a door that was locked, and this locked door pretty much encompasses what I like about the exploration. The door, just like many areas in the game, can be tackled in many different ways. So the door was locked, so I tried to look around. I could go to the computer, see if I can find a passkey there, find that, be able to use it on the door, get through it. Or completely try and dodge the door by going all the way around it and using the glue gun to make that aforementioned bridge that I was talking about before. Or if you have the skills in tacking, you can then use that to bypass the lock. Figuring out how to use your arsenal and then settling into a rhythm can be rather fun. I love how the game also uses a toy as a means to be able to get through areas in the environment. The crossbow really does make me feel like an action hero using an unconventional item as a means to get through all the areas. Another item is the deadly recycler grenades. These can be really effective in combat and also help for exploration. I had to get by some nuclear waste areas that had these containers that were hurting me because of the nuclear waste, but I wanted to get by them, be able to get to this supply closet that had some goodies inside. So I used the recycler grenade, which essentially creates this little black hole, sucks up all the containers, and then I was able to get by. These are just some of the tools at your disposal, and you may not even tackle these situations just like how I did. I really like the sense of choice in the exploration in this game. Once you realize that situations can be tackled from different directions, you start to realize, how can I get through this the most efficiently? Should I use those recycler grenades to remove debris, or rather should I save them for later and use them on enemies? As you progress further into the game, you'll start to see some of the magic behind the curtain, as you can see that the glue gun and the hacking skills can pretty much get you through most of the areas in the game. Even after you realize this, the exploration still maintains a decent level of satisfaction. You're always earning something, always finding something, finding a new path to another area. I really love when a game lets you go into an area where the enemy's levels are a lot higher than you. You see this a lot in RPGs where certain areas will be designated for certain level ranges, and this way you know when you're going into it, will I be fighting harder or weaker enemies. Many of the early hours of Prey have a similar type of feel. The game will allow you to go into some areas before you even get to them for a story mission. This is delightful because the enemies are a lot stronger than you, and since it's that early in the game, you don't have any resources. So every small win feels like a large victory. And I love when a game allows you to do this. Instead of saying, nope, we're sectioning it off, it's too hard, you can't go into this area, Prey says, you wanna? Come try it out. The exploration is paired with a great sense of isolation. It gave me some really good Dead Space 1 vibes. Part of this is because the main character is played as a silent protagonist. I usually don't like this because I find that silent protagonists can create this disconnect when you're in conversations with other NPCs. Because essentially they're talking to the screen, and if you don't have a dialogue wheel like in a lot of RPGs, it can kind of just feel a little weird. But here, the silent protagonist really works. You're alone on the space station, where there's very few spots that actually feel safe. The station is inhabited by deadly creatures that aren't interested in seeing you live. So this adds to the danger. You're by yourself and can only rely on your abilities and supplies to succeed. I don't have the right word for it either, but I find being alone in space can give a great sense of solace until the enemies start coming. While the game does have its fair share of combat, the game is moderately paced. You're meant to take your time, explore the environment, soak up the atmosphere. The combat does provide its own options. similar to how exploration does. Like I said before, I didn't use any of the alien powers for my combat encounters. Instead, I opted to go with stealth and firearms. The shotgun and slow-mo ability were the two that I used whenever I was sighted by an enemy. What definitely added to the fun of combat, and definitely in more of the exploration, are the mimic type enemies that will kind of turn into these inanimate objects and jump out at you and try and attack you. What's neat is as you play the game, you start to learn how they do their thing, so you can kind of spot them in the environment, but there are still many instances where they can get the drop on you, thus always making that exploration just a little bit tense because you don't know what's going to be around that corner. While I did enjoy the combat, I don't think that it's the strongest aspect of the game. I think exploration is, with combat playing second fiddle. And with that, I can understand someone calling this game boring or slow. Like I said before, this is a moderately paced game. Exploration isn't for everyone, but it most definitely is for me. The bursts of combat and always finding a new environment to explore gave so much engaging hours of content. While the exploration was what kept me engaged for many hours, it was the beginning moments of the game that really hooked me. I've spoken about this before. Some games and stories, they have that hook. They get you in early and it really piques your interest, and that carries throughout the main game. We're not going to get any story analysis here, but I wanted to kind of give some attention to the intro of the game on how the first hour did an effective job of grabbing my attention. The intro starts out with you in your apartment and you give your brother a phone call. He tells you that you need to come in and run some tests.
Hey, Morgan, wake up. You're burning daylight. You sent the helicopter to pick you up. It's just a few tests. Don't forget to wear your suit. See you soon. Oh, listen, really great you decided to come on board. We're gonna shake things up, Morgan. Like old times.
This bit is a little fun because you're allowed to explore the apartment before you then have to go on a helicopter ride to get to the facility. The title of the mission is The First Day on the Job, and this is usually a good setup for a horror or sci-fi film where someone's first day is going to this job site and then that job site goes to hell. I felt like the intro was potentially moving in that direction. On top of that, this beginning section is really familiar and very mundane. It doesn't really grab my attention initially. Once you get to the site, you go through a series of tests which are essentially just tutorials on controls.
Hey, you don't look terrible in a TranStar uniform. How's your eye? Still red? I know the test might seem a little unconventional, but it's a you family tradition. Breaking convention is in our blood. Once you start the test, just do whatever comes natural.
Great. Let's begin. For this first test, I'd like you to remove the boxes from the red circle as quickly as you can. Just go with your gut. Okay? Wonderful. Press the red button when you're ready. Wonderful. You're absolutely fine. Let's move on to room B then.
During the tests, an unknown life form attacks one of the doctors, and you think this is going to go the way you think, where now you have to deal with this alien infestation.
Wow. I'm impressed. Well done. Well done. We're nearly through it. For this next part, I'm going to display an image. I want you to take a good look at it. In a moment, I'm going to ask you what... Is my coffee? It's empty.
But the intro essentially repeats itself and you go back to the apartment. This is where the game started to hook me. At first I thought the game was going to follow a familiar path, but then the game played with my expectations. The game needed to be mundane and familiar to be able to pull off this little twist like this. The intro made you feel comfortable in how it presented the game. Once you returned back to your apartment, I knew I couldn't take anything in this game at face value. I needed to question everything. You also got to see tidbits of how everything was going on behind the scenes while you were doing the first bit in the game, and that kind of added to the mystery. The intro was really good. It was simple, it was smart, and it was well executed. Prey had its fair share of issues, like long loading times between areas, a heavy amount of tedious backtracking towards the end of the game, and a lack of a proper final boss fight to really bookend your game. I acknowledge these flaws, but every time I think back to Prey, I think of a game that gave me feelings of Dead Space, great exploration, and a lot like BioShock. My intent with this video is to present what I enjoyed about this game. I found Prey to be one of 2017's underappreciated titles. It isn't a game for everyone. For some, the game is too slow. For others, they're still frustrated with Bethesda for canceling the sequel to the original Prey. But for many, this game is a memorable experience that provides many hours of content. Since the game is almost a year old, I don't see Bethesda coming out with any new content for the game, but what I would love to see is for them to port this game onto the Switch, and maybe it'll find some new life there. In addition to that, I'd like to see Bethesda greenlight a sequel for this game because I'd like to see more of this. Overall, if you really like single player games and you like to get hours of content out of your game, you must try Prey. There's a lot here and it's very fun. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other ones, and if you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon links down in the description below and at the end of this video. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.